Okay, so we're gonna wait for Krista Underwood to connect fully, and then we can think about starting. 5 people means we have a quorum, which is awesome. Cool. So should we start? Are we good with that? Awesome. Okay, great. So I'm Carolyn Dash on the main screen. There is another Carolyn Dash on your screen. That's my other laptop that has our documents on it. Not to confuse everyone. And we're also joined by a few members of the public. Jim is here, and so is Susan Smiley, that's right, from New Haven. Was there anything that you want to say as a public comment period, or just want to wait and talk about wildlife when we get there?
Well, I'm here because our town conservation commission has also done a little work on getting ready to do a wildlife crossing study. We've not had one, so we've chosen 10 sites with the help of Nils, but we're not too far along, and we've had one winter's 2-time training with snow and tracks.
Oh, cool.
But I'm intrigued by and wanted to keep up with what you guys are doing.
Cool, that's awesome. Thank you.
And Susan, what town are you coming from? New Haven?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. And so that's everyone that's here. And then Nancy is just off camera, unless she says something. Say
I'm here.
something. It works.
I'm on the phone.
Okay, great. So we call to order, public comments, additional items to the agenda. Anyone with additional items to add to our agenda? Okay, great. Review and approve of minutes from the November 10th meeting. Do you have any comments on the minutes?
I move that we approve them.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. The minutes are approved.
Did we need
Okay.
a second to make sure that those minutes were?
We did second it. We said we shouldn't bother seconding it, and we keep going back on that. So maybe I should just do the seconds again. So does someone want to second the approval of the minutes? Jana, do you want to second it?
I'm happy to second.
So Jana seconds the approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, we all approve. Thank you, Nancy. Yes. Thank you for doing it. You're very helpful at time. I'm sorry. Nancy's a new role this evening because Ayla's not here. Okay, so any correspondence that we want to talk about? I think there was one piece that Helen had conducted to a professor at Middleburg. We can talk about that with the wildlife stuff, I think. Old business. Okay, great. So we have 2 open seats for Bristol residents on the Conservation Commission. I sent an email out. I didn't make it that much snappier like Helen wanted, but I did change the title to 2 members available or something.
It's good.
I make that more obvious. If someone has a even snappier, I just get bogged down with they probably have questions. We should answer the questions. So we'll send that out.
I saw it right away on the Front Porch Forum, so I think you did a great job, Carolyn. It caught my attention.
So I'll send that out again next month, maybe twice or so. We'll see how it goes, and we'll see if we get any nibbles. Otherwise, we may have to push it harder in a different direction. I also emailed our alumni list to see if they had any ideas, and no one had contacted me yet about that. But not everyone on the alumni list checks their emails that frequently, so we'll sort of see if we get any bites from that as well. Anyone else with thoughts about membership on our 2 open seats? It is really nice if we can fill those seats, because if anyone is sick or if we lose the Smiths to busyness, we get stuck. It could be closer quorum, so it's good to have extra people, as well as we have extra people to help contribute to these conversations. Okay, great. So let's get to, this is our major point of business, I think, for today, is the updating of the wildlife maps. I want to discuss the project priorities and deliverables. So as sort of our homework for this week, we had decided to come up with our priorities of what we see the project being. When we've talked to a handful of people with different expertise in the community, in Vermont at this point. And I think that it became very clear at last meeting that we need to figure out what it is that we want. Like, what's our main purpose? What are our priorities? Because it's hard to bring people in and say, we want wildlife something without, how can we have someone do that for us if we don't know, or with us if we don't even know what it is we want to do. So today we sort of had earmarked as the day to talk about that priority list of what we see the project as. Helen already emailed me some thoughts, as did Alex. So I have those sort of mixed into a document I made, as well as my own thoughts. And so I'm going to share that with the group so we can all see that document. I'm going to share it off my other computer. So we can look at that together, and then we can add things in through a discussion here. Great, it's working. Okay, so here's what I wrote. Can we all see that? Is that big enough? Maybe I can make it a little bigger. So here's how I started this, and I want to just have anyone's I think we have a jumping off place. If we had some text we could talk about instead of just like shooting things off, because we don't have like a whiteboard or paper, and so because we're not together. So here's my, I don't know, I kind of made up list. So we would like updated wildlife corridor maps for Bristol, and you don't have to type all of this. This can just be our document, and we can.
Okay.
I don't think you should have to. Don't type that much. That'll make it crazy. I also, I can just copy paste it for you. You can stick it in if you want.
Right.
So don't worry about typing this. So updated wildlife corridor maps for Bristol, focusing on a wide band of wildlife, focusing on umbrella species. So those that are important, like ecosystem sort of species that can help other smaller species as well, using both field-based approaches and landscape mapping approaches. Wildlife assessments of town parks for our management plans. Think about our major parks there. I had a lot of ideas about community connection and outreach. So community involvement, working with community members to do citizen science and ecological surveys, community created maps of wildlife distribution, sort of liaise with hunters as well. I know that Alex had a lot of really good ideas about that. Education, sort of community workshops and training, and then results dissemination. So I think my personal fear is that we're going to do all this work and it'll end up in a drawer somewhere, an internet drawer. And so I want to make sure that something happens with this. So my ideas for dissemination were education materials for adults and students at the schools and libraries, maybe give things to the Four Winds curriculum group that works with the students. Give copies of the results of select board and all town commissions, maybe including local not-for-profits that overlap with this area as well. And then incorporating the results of the next town plan. And then I think is sort of that like next level, like where could this go? What do we want with it? So it's not just dusty somewhere or forgotten in someone's drive. Identify what are the most important habitats and corridors in Bristol, and focus on which are the most at risk for development, invasive climate change, what have you, and then try to collaborate with the planning commission and zoning to think of our next steps to protect these areas of most concern. So this is just a list I came up with this morning.
That's a great
I just want to
list,
see what you
Carolyn.
thought about it.
That's excellent. Yeah.
So I just want to see what you thought. I was trying to think about what we had talked about in the past, and is this, can we work on, we can edit this and talk about what we need to add or change, or this is just me trying to start a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I also had something else. Helen, could you comment on the email you had with Jeff? I think we forwarded that to the commission members, but could you summarize that?
Yes. So Jeff Howarth is a geography professor at Middlebury. And I know, I went to the Middlebury town office website and found their conservation commission and learned that they had done a lot on habitat types in the town of Middlebury. I didn't see much about wildlife crossings, but they had significant work on habitat types in Middlebury. And so I learned that Jeff Howarth is on the Conservation Commission, and he spearheaded revising those maps. So I wrote him to say, oh, we're thinking of doing this in Bristol. Can you tell me something about your methods? And that's the long email that Carolyn forwarded to you. It turns out he had to leave. He had a sabbatical from Middlebury, and this is what he did for his sabbatical for a semester. Is he's a GIS modeler, programmer. He did a lot of computer work, overlaying, just, complicated GIS stuff, and came up with very detailed maps for Middlebury. It was way more information than I was ready for. I think it's more than we can handle unless one of us has some secret GIS aspirations that I don't know about.
I mean, I have a paper published in Landscape Ecology, so,
So did you read, when you read Jeff's response, did all of that make sense to you?
Yeah, I was like, sure, yeah.
I can do that.
That was like that third chapter of my dissertation was not about wildlife, it was about forest fires, but it's a lot of that kind of mapping. But I think that's something you can pull a student in on, right? If we could work with the students, I think we could definitely have some students at least do some preliminary work with that. To this end, on this exact topic, I have a note from Alex Smith that he would like me to share. He just read the exchange between Helen and Jeff, and he brings up something I was going to talk about at the meeting. The fact that a lot of the legwork in a project like this could be done from aerial photography and topo maps. When I'm doing my scouting for places to bow hunt ahead of the season, which is all about finding travel corridors, I do about 90% of the work with a topo map / aerial imagery app called OnX or Google Earth. After that, it's largely just a matter of getting in there and deciding which tree to climb in. Obviously, I'm just talking about white-tailed deer in this instance, which may be easier to pattern and predict the movements of than maybe a bobcat, for instance. But it strikes me that the right person or people could get us a long way towards figuring out where to focus things like camera trails. Trail cam. So that was, I thought, that same idea, like maybe that's a nice way to approach it. He has another piece he would like me to share with you as well. I didn't read this one yet. It just came in. So the other thing I was going to bring up is that I've been mulling over the actionable side of this. That's a thing people say, no? I don't know if I was supposed to say that part. A productive way to distribute such a map if we did produce one. I started talking about a property I've been hunting on over in Cornwall in the last meeting, but I hadn't really formed my thoughts and rambled a bit about what I was really trying to get at with this. There's a lot of parcels like that, including many in Bristol, I'm sure, that provide really critical habitat and trail routes for all kinds of critters. And these properties change hands. They often come into the hands of folks who may not have ever considered what role their new property plays in the lives of the animals around them. While it's not our role to tell people what they should or shouldn't do with their land, it seems to me that many of them may well be extremely interested in the information if we could find a way to get it to them. For example, in Cornwall, the property is bushy jungle with a bunch of other properties with bushy jungles. So it provides the only nesting area for turkeys in this large area. This is the longest text I've ever received, by the way. Would the folks who brought the land decide to bush hog it and put a tennis court if they knew? Probably not. But I think that some people would be really interested. It makes me think of Porter's gift bags to new folks in Bristol. If we could find a way to put together a pamphlet for new landowners and have them have a sense of the property, it could have a really nice application for this project. And bring up the Cornwall place, it's such a perfect and obvious example. I know that we can find things like this in Bristol. And yes, certainly read this out loud. So there you go.
Wow.
I think he really wanted to be here tonight. He really likes this topic. But that kind of gets to my idea about the results dissemination and thinking about what we can do with that.
Well, related to that text, wouldn't it be interesting if wildlife habitat, any type of mapping, any type of assessment of what habitats are on a given piece of property become part of the deed? So when someone buys a piece of property, buys a house, they get this document along with it that says, this mapping was done in 2012 and here's what was determined. And it's not saying what they have to do with it. It's just saying these are the various habitat attributes that have been found on your property.
Maybe we could offer at the end a deliverable that's a pamphlet or a map or something that we could maybe give to the local banks so they could give to people when they close on their mortgages.
So I'm thinking much more direct. I'm very much into green burial and natural burial. And I know that I have enough land that I could be buried on my own property, but that has to become part of the deed, that it has to be stated that Helen Young is buried at this corner. And, you know, people are saying it's going to be harder to sell and all that's down the road. But the fact that things that are going on your property become part of the deed could be used to our advantage right now. I mean, I think this is a legal thing, and I don't think there's any way that we can ask that this language be part of a property transfer. But that's kind of the path I'm going, not just giving it to banks, not just putting up posters, but saying that when you're buying a piece of property, this is something that goes along with it.
I think
think
we're
that's an
maybe
outstanding
getting a
idea.
little ahead of ourselves. Like first we have to figure out how we're going to gather the data. And I think that the existing documents in a town provide ample places to report this information out. So it could be in the town plan, for example. Then it's up to the planning commission and the zoning board to receive that information and deliberate as to how they will receive that information, how they, if they choose to consider it within zoning or planning documents. So, but I think we first have to gather the data before we talk about how we're going to be disseminating the data.
Totally.
I agree with Kristen. I think Helen is spot on. I think it's something that we'll probably see greater consciousness for. You know, there's that conference that's going on worldwide about trying to understand more about how nature and human beings interact. And I don't know the name of it offhand, but you know, climate change, everything else. I mean, we are so connected to nature. It's inevitable that that kind of information is going to be more and more important. How it gets codified is another question, but I think it'll be happening probably, well, within our lifetimes. I'm fairly convinced. It's just that important. So many ecosystems are under serious challenge and threatened and so on. So, but I think first things first is trying to collect the data. And I think, Carolyn, as you point out, it's like, yeah, we don't want it to just be shelved. We want it to be acted upon. One idea that comes to me is that often when you go, and this is a tough one, when you go to town meeting and not everybody goes, there's all sorts of documents that are available. So I think back to what Kristen said is that there are various committees, town planning commissions, others that would probably be best to determine what those methods are to distribute, but we can offer suggestions, that's for sure.
Okay, so to our priority list then of data we'd like to collect or approaches, what are we thinking we should be adding or changing from this list I threw together? We've had a lot of different ideas over the last few months, and I was just wondering what we can do so we can sort of take this list of priorities and start thinking through who we can find to help us with those items. Maybe invite Jeff Howarth and Alexis Mikhailo. They had offered to be involved in the project. Maybe we could see if they would be interested in coming to a meeting in January and, you know, seeing which pieces of this. I think that would work well for the school year and like the hiring cycle for like summer students, as well as would get us on track to think about creating something for town meeting day if you wanted as well. Sort of eliciting help from the community at that time would be a nice target date, I think. But what do you think?
When is
Yeah.
town meeting? Dave?
March,
Roughly.
Early March.
early March, first week of March.
All right, and the students to have a student on a project for summer needs to be hired in, I think, February, maybe January. So they would need to know what we're thinking and what the plan sort of is by our January meeting, I think, so they could start to get plans for summer if we want a summer student. And then there was always that, there was that outreach grant we talked about as well, and I think that's due on a rolling basis, but we want that in place if we want to use that money for that semester.
I'd be interested in Susan's thoughts at this point, if she would like to contribute, where New Haven is in this process. And there might be some opportunities to collaborate.
Well, we aren't or we're either not as far along, or we're heading in a slightly, or started in a different place, but we sort of thought we were going to be doing we were going to offer a map that maps we started with 10 crossing points, we're down to 3, and map either with our own, with the help of cameras, or just by visiting those crossing areas and looking at who's been tramping through there, and just document that. And we haven't gotten it any further than that. Thinking that we, the members of the Conservation Commission and or other people in the community would contribute to that tracking, those observation steps. The other things that you've mentioned, we haven't encompassed yet.
Yeah. I see there's a spot on River Road. I see roadkill there all the time. I'm like, I know there's a crossing here.
Right.
So what do you plan to do with the data you collect?
Well, we were thinking that we would take it straight to the planning commission. And there's an intriguing development that we became aware of in Waltham. Their Conservation Commission did this sort of crossing work and used it as a basis for a overlay map for their plan, for their zoning ordinance. And a woman on Halleck Road who sort of spent her time being on the Waltham Planning Commission or the Waltham Conservation Commission, and visiting regularly at meetings or select board meetings and planning commission meetings in New Haven, kind of told us about this. And I've skimmed that document there, the text especially of the document. It's an advisory document. It isn't have controlling like zoning ordinances are, but it covers, if we had something like it, it covers gives a lot of advice and direction, and kind of wakes people up to, it matters how far you push your house inside these woods. It matters where that driveway goes. It matters where those streams crossings are. And so it sounds, I mean, we've been focused on that, that overlay map idea, and which doesn't have the force of law, but it gives people a lot more guidance than they have now, and pays attention to things that our zoning ordinance does not pay attention to.
Yeah. Yeah, our we have the town plan has maps in it that are, I think over 20 years old, we decided now. And so thinking about, could we redo those?
I'd love to see your map.
maps.
I'd love to see your study map for the wildlife crossing. It's just as we've not looked at one.
Yeah, we have just, it's in our town report. I could show
Yeah,
you.
it is. It looks like that.
I was like, I can't really show you. I have too many screens.
Oh, not now. I mean,
Can we have access to that Waltham
you
report?
could. I can give you, Amanda Bodell is the person who, as we've talked the most to about it, and I can find her email and send it to you.
that would be great.
And I think regional planning, Madison Shropshire, has, you could help on that score too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as Susan
maybe-
mentions regional planning, that's a great resource that's available to towns, and a clearinghouse. So that's good to keep in mind. We should make whatever findings we come across available to them for sure.
So just to answer Susan's question about what do our maps look like, they're in our town plan. And I wish I had written down the page numbers, but I made copies of forest blocks and habitat connectors, wildlife corridors and connectivity, and biologically significant areas in Bristol. And these are all dated 2019.
Right.
So they're not that old, but at least you get an idea of what the scale of ours looks like, how refined is it?
But the study, it's on page 98 of our town plan, and the wildlife corridors were developed from a study that dates back to 2003, 2002. So the town plan itself and those documents may be dated 2019, but the
Susan,
study,
do you have that open? Do you want to share it with us?
I can, yeah.
Because I can stop sharing and you can go back and share that.
Hopefully folks can see that.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's fairly simplified. It's just showing bear corridors in red and bobcat corridors in orange. And they were identified in 2002 from field surveys and published in 2003. It was a contiguous wildlife habitat map of the Lewis Creek and the Platte River watersheds. And so Bristol's just a small part of that.
Do you have any idea who did that study? Like maybe we could find that study that could help us as a launch point.
No, it's Lewis Creek Association, and
It
we did
is.
contact them early on, and they said they declined to be involved. They just have too many other things going on right now.
Oh, I didn't mean I want them to be involved. I don't want to put that on them. I meant, could we get a copy of it and see the whole, like maybe that would be something if we had that file or some background information. Do you think they would provide that?
It's just the whole Lewis Creek and the Platte River watersheds, and these maps were generated by Addison County Regional Planning Commission. So I think that could be a way for us to get access to the larger map, the larger data set.
Got it. Okay, so maybe the planning commission then. So I just added, you may have watched me do that. I said consider / discover what other maps of the area are available, possibly with the Addison County Regional Planning Commission.
Yeah,
So
I think if we talk to Maddie or to Andrew LaRoe over there, they could possibly share with us the shapefiles, the original GIS shapefiles for the.
Oh, that would be really, yeah, that would help for a student project to have like a starting place then, you know. So let me share mine again. This one. So I'm just gonna add maps area, what maps like the previous studies are available. Anything else we want to think about or take out or add, or, I mean, as I said, I just was like shooting from the hip making this list this morning, so.
I just want to put a plug in for one entity, and it could be a consultant that we hire using grant funds, or it could be a student who we task with this idea of compiling existing resources and kind of getting a lay of the land, and then coming back to the commission with some very pointed recommendations. I know that Sophie Mazuita in her cost estimate identified that as an early task that she could do that's fairly affordable, that might help give us a little more concrete guidance about next steps
Mhm.
after that expert has looked at all these maps, as opposed to us trying to do this in our spare time, right?
Mhm.
And and kind of directing the project by committee almost. I think there's some value in having a consultant or an
Mhm.
academic that could just kind of really focus us.
Mhm.
I agree
What
with
if
that.
we, oh, sorry.
I also think that as a launching point, that gives us sort of a baseline of some direction. But I think simultaneously, I think it was Carolyn who said, be great if by next meeting we had some ideas of how to communicate with the college, because maybe they have an AmeriCorps person or someone that they're gonna, they need to hire ahead of time. And so if it's grant based to get Sophie on board, we would try to do that. And some of these things, it's hard to always know what the timeline is, but I think both have merit. We want to try and see as much work as we might be able to accomplish through citizen scientist outreach, and at the same time, I think having some professional, experienced guidance initially would be serve us very well.
What if we're thinking of seeing if we could get a student maybe involved, maybe to think about these two tasks for the summer? Would that be something we could start with? It's like start like a little bit, maybe with a little bit of, getting those maps ideas. I just hate to lose the opportunity of getting someone involved in this sooner than later.
When did Alexis say she teaches classes for which these could be projects for those? That spring or fall?
Yeah, she's I'm not exactly positive on the top of my head, but I know she was saying she would love to do an environmental studies 401 on this, which is a big course where it's like sort of designed around one big project. And she was like, oh, it would be so great to do like Bristol wildlife as like the whole class, and that wouldn't be, in the next year or so, but if we have a long time horizon on this, right, we could set some groundwork and think about small pieces that students could do to sort of get ready for a bigger push, if
Right.
that's the direction that goes in.
But I thought she also taught a mammalogy course.
She does. She's teaching it right now. Oh, she would do it.
It's a
Oh.
fall class.
It's fall right now, at least, yeah. I saw some of those field classes, I feel, are just more fun in fall,
Wouldn't it be interesting to have a J-term course that does nothing but tracking?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, like it.
Too late for this J-term, but.
Yeah.
So one of the comments I sent to Carolyn was one of our priorities, one of our assignments is education. A category of what we're supposed to be doing is education. And it seemed to me that asking Alex and her students to do some of this work is killing two birds with one stone, where we're getting a professional to help collect the data, but she is also teaching her students the techniques needed to do that, teaching potentially citizens how to monitor tracking and report tracking. I liked the idea of incorporating Alex and her students as much as we can for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, I would like that because I could help with those projects and help advise those students as well, which I think would be good to have that. We could really connect and get the grants written from both groups. I think that'd be really fun, personally, and effective, obviously. Yeah, so what are you thinking? You said much? You're typing everything.
So
You don't need to type so much.
I'm so stressed.
You don't need to type.
all of it. Those were all kind of my thoughts. I think definitely using the college, the students, to get them the experience and to help us get people and professionals in to help us in the areas that we don't know what we're doing. And then, yeah, I like that bringing in the hunters and for the community, but also trying to figure out how to get just like regular citizens, non-hunters, how to, encourage them to participate in.
Yeah. And we talk about I have that bullet of the community created wildlife distribution maps and like
Yeah.
ecological knowledge surveys could be really good too. We could develop something and then,
How to
pass it
get
out or.
their information
Yeah.
to us.
Yeah.
But yes, most of that.
Cool. Well, anyone else?
How do we go about getting back in touch with Sophie and starting up the grant process for funding sort of an initial phase of her potential work?
We can, I get the impression that she's available most any time. I think the longer lead item for us would be identifying the grant source that we would use to hire her for a task or two or more. That's going to be the longer lead time, and we do have some options for grant funding, which could include things like we could go to someplace like Meet Repeats, possibly for a small amount of money, like under 1,000. We do have the tiny grants from the Association of Vermont Conservation Commissions, but they're only on the order of a few $100s.
Yeah, those are due in April. I looked it up.
Yeah. And we do also have the Bristol Conservation Reserve Fund. We could make a request of the select board to use those funds to fund a consultant to do a few tasks. But that would require, of course, we'd have to get on their agenda and make that ask, and it would be up to the select board to decide if they would approve of that request.
We may be around the corner from making a motion, at least to pursue that avenue. And I also think that we could put off to next meeting if was it Jeff was the professor, to have a chance to come in or to present a little bit more information at our next January meeting, and sort of pursue both of those tracks simultaneously, because I think that dovetails having the college involved with potential of students, and then at the same time some more experienced specified background with Sophie and others, but needing to cover the cost of that through Kristen's enumeration of different grant sources or funding sources.
Would it be all right if I shared this list and met with Alexis and maybe Jeff, if he's on campus, and saw what they were thinking and what they would be interested in doing in the near term, some first steps with this? Would that be useful?
Yeah.
Very much so, yes.
Okay. Well, then, because the semester, I just had my last class today, so maybe people have some breathing room and are bored with grading. So maybe I could talk to people in the next few weeks, or maybe just in the next beginning of the new year, and see, with a list like this. And again, we can keep editing this, but thinking about what they can offer and what kind of collaborations we could have, and what we could do to apply for money through the school, and as well as maybe trying to see if we can get any summer students involved, which would be, you know, free to us, that the college would cover that cost to have, what was it, 8 or 10 weeks full-time student working on this project.
Yeah, Carolyn, I think that's a great approach. And if I could suggest, you could banty around the idea as Helen was saying, you know, that's a year out. Wouldn't it be great if a professor decided to take that on? I think students could get really excited about that. And then maybe we'd have some game cams ready to be placed, and you know, some data that could be really handily collected. You know, it might be easier in the winter months, just visibility wise and available time. So I think if you have a chance to just put that into the mix of your conversations, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll pursue that over the next few weeks, and then we'll see if anyone wants to come to our next meeting and continue that conversation. But I would be happy to do that and sort of make a plan with them as to what they would suggest happens first, or what they could offer to do, just help us begin a project. What students would be involved, what kind of funding they could get for student research through the college. I think this is really ripe for an undergrad, or, you know, several undergrads to work on. Although of course we need the experience from their advisors, but I think it could be really powerful.
In addition, do we have some other contacts, Kristen, up at UVM? Because it seems like they're certainly doing some of this stuff as well. Because I thought maybe it was Sophie that mentioned some connection through UVM, but maybe I'm not connecting it properly with where I heard that.
Yeah, she knows of Jed Murdoch and Brittany Mosier, who are also doing this kind of work, and welcomed the idea of collaborating with them. I think we want to also be cautious that we're not spreading ourselves too thin and engaging too many different people in many of these tasks, because then we might again lose our direction or our focus. But I think at this point we're still in the information gathering phase, so it does make sense to invite Jeff in January. I still like the idea of having some point person that's not any one of us on the commission, that's kind of guiding us and leading us. Maybe that ends up being, if we go the Middlebury College route, the professor that's leading the students. But I like having an expert that is kind of guiding the overall direction.
Do you want me to ask if Alexis would be interested in filling that role when I talk to her?
Yeah, I think that would be useful to learn.
Great. Well, it sounds like, so I'll go ahead and I'll have those meetings, and we'll see what that level of involvement sounds like that they want to have or are able to have, and then we'll invite Jeff Howarth to our next meeting if he can come. That'd be great. And then anything else actionable? Did you want to also pursue what grants maybe we might consider targeting? Could someone take that?
I think we really need to refine the scope of work before we think about grants.
Okay, that's fine. I wasn't sure if that was something we had talked about for.
How about just initially looking into what grant opportunities might be out there before start writing a grant, just at least know maybe we're looking at 3 or so that kind of fit a criteria that we would work from.
Yeah,
I don't have any sort of background with that area of grants. I just finished writing a matching barn grant. I know a little bit about that, but not this other area.
Yeah, we know some of them already, but anyone's welcome to do a little more exploring.
Okay, and so we could maybe consider grant options as like a homework assignment, maybe.
Can we go back one topic? which is the work that Jeff Howarth did for the town of Middlebury. My impression is much of what he did was much broader and different than identifying wildlife corridors. That it was really ecosystem mapping. That isn't on our list of what we want to accomplish to develop a wildlife corridor map. So I'm a little worried that Jeff will come in and talk extensively about how he did all of this mapping stuff for the town of Middlebury, but it's not relevant to what we want, what we need. I mean, so I'm looking at what you have up on the screen, and it's update wildlife corridor maps. It doesn't say anything about defining forest blocks or biologically significant areas. I don't think you're proposing to redo these other maps that are in the town plan. It's the wildlife corridor maps.
I think that's our focus. Yeah.
So I guess maybe that would require me or someone rereading Jeff's response to my query about what he had done. But my impression is it was much greater. Yeah. So I'm not that his feedback will be not useful, but I think at this point we need more direction rather than more breadth.
I think it's along what Alex was saying with how before he goes out, he's thinking about where are the connectors, where's the forest cover, what's the topography, would that species go on that incline anyway, or is there water, and sort of imagining what those habitats and what that looks like before sort of going into a location. So I think what we were thinking about, what part can you avoid sampling because you won't find something, right? Like I listed the priorities for parks, and I took the town green out. I was like, wow, what lives there anyway, right? And that's sort of that idea of like trying to figure out where we think the animals are. So that kind of mapping, I think we're thinking maybe like a first step of mapping, but then also at the end coming back and putting what we found into a map, right? So a pre and a post map almost of where do we think they are, and then where do we find them actually.
I think Jeff's approach seems like it's a base level for a lot of different directions, but I think it's a precursor for where we would start, because he was talking about forest fragments, blocks, and then sort of smaller fragments and connectors, and my interpretation of that was, yeah, it could be used for a lot of different things, but in open fields that bridged forest sections. So I think that's probably, and he may have some other ideas that have gone further after just, some of that mapping. But I think that's a good question to ask, Helen, is, how do you think this would apply to specifically some levels of how it might pertain or help with wildlife corridors specifically?
Yeah.
I think you got to unmute, Helen, maybe.
Nope. You're still muted, Helen.
I was looking at the email from Jeff to try to figure out, and the more
I think
the more I reread it, the more I think that yes, what he's doing is applicable to what we want to do.
I think importantly too, he said the newest maps wouldn't be out till March 23, so there's no rush there, since that would be an important thing to wait for, I think.
But that's just for the town of Middlebury.
Oh, was that just Middlebury? I thought it was for the state.
I don't know. Again, if I leave the Zoom window, then I can't mute and unmute.
No worries, no worries.
I get the impression that what he did, it's just a sort of a map layering. I don't know all the details, but he could take a prescribed area, such as the boundary lines of the town of Bristol, and duplicate that whole, not that he would take it on, but give us the steps, or maybe have a student that might want to take it on. I mean, I just think that it's a duplicatable, what's the conjugation of that? It's a replicable
There we go.
process.
Well, maybe I'll I'll have a meeting. I could, if you wanted, I could meet briefly and see if sort of see what he has to say about that, and see if he thinks it'd be useful to come to a meeting. Would that be useful? Or Helen, if you want to email him.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, Carolyn.
Okay. Helen, would you like to email him, or do you want me to try to meet with him? Oh, you're gone again, Helen. We can't hear you.
So I was back to rereading his email. If you could talk to him, that would be great. I am not a GIS person.
Yeah,
So
totally. Yeah, no, it's fine. I just pretend to be one, so I'll do that. I can play one on Meet TV, it turns out. Okay, so I'll also meet. I just finished my classes. I'm all cocky. I have all this free time, so. Okay, great. That sounds wonderful. Anything else about wildlife maps do we want to talk about, or do we want to move on?
I just wanted to, since Susan is here, I just wanted to remind us that if there's any way that we can identify training opportunities that could be inclusive of Bristol citizens, but also New Haven citizens, I support that idea.
It's a great idea, yeah.
Did you say New Haven too? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, if we could do
New Haven?
training events and invite a wide group of people, that would be perfect.
Like have a training event hosted at Holly Hall, then that's accessible to Bristol and New Haven and surrounding towns, or even on Zoom, whatever.
I'd expand on
we did it.
Kristen's idea and try and see if we could put that out maybe through the Regional Planning Commission, because we had a woman from Cornwall, right? That, and their planning commission.
Very
So
Dodge,
it seems as though it's broader than just New Haven and Bristol in interest.
I know in the trainings that we did with the woman in Starksboro in the field, when it's after it snowed, too big a group would be counterproductive. You're traipsing through the snow, you want to be, everyone wanted to be as close to her as possible as we peered at these little round shapes in the snow. And to have big groups for that, but for video training, that's a different matter. I think that would be something we could all take part in.
Yeah. Or if we were to develop an ecological knowledge survey that we could distribute to both towns, if different towns did different things with it, right? The work of creating the survey could be duplicated.
Does regional planning have any of that knowledge already?
I have no idea.
Not to my knowledge, not in wildlife tracking.
Okay, anything else? Are we good to move on? I'm happy to keep talking about this. I just want to make sure that
I think that was very productive.
Okay. Okay, great.
I'm gonna go. Thanks.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan.
Bye.
All right, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I hope we can find a way to work together.
Yes,
Do we have
Yes,
any
I
contact
will, I'm sure.
information?
Pardon?
Do we have any contact information?
I think Kristen does.
Kristen?
Do you?
Okay, she's muted, but she has it.
I have it, I can send it to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Great, thank you so
It
much.
was nice to meet you.
Okay, great. So then moving on, parks updates. Does anyone have a park update? I have no park updates. I've heard nothing from anyone this month. No one has heard anything. Okay, so that's going to be no updates. And then the next item is the Edith Stock Fund. We thought we would spend a little bit of time today brainstorming fund uses. There was the idea that people had volunteered to talk to maybe friends that are birders. I think the Smiths, unfortunately, had said they would do some of this work. And then the Audubon Society as well.
I
Um,
emailed the Otter Creek Audubon and haven't heard back yet. So I'll probably hear back tomorrow because the meeting is today. So about ideas, things that birds need that would help them with their habitat or
Yeah,
things.
totally. I'm trying to see if anyone else has emailed me since. I haven't gotten anything, just in case. Okay, so you've reached out to them. That's great. I think that the Smiths want to talk to the Cusacks, but they aren't here, so we can't talk to them about that. Did anyone else have any other ideas they had generated, or anyone they talked to about it? Oh, also, I had talked to our alumni group about the brainstorming ideas, and I have not heard back from anyone except Jim Stapleton, who said he would be very excited to be involved in spring. But he didn't mention the birds. I don't even know if I asked about the birds because I didn't get it.
That's great.
So bird ideas, bird or fund uses in general, technically, since we don't have to be for birds. Would we like to table this till next month?
We could table it.
Do we have any other project things that at the parks or anything that we have been talking about that we need? Or anything we want to?
Well, we have the
do-
bird boxes, and there's the kiosk at Sycamore.
That needs a little
um,
updating. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. What was that?
No, the kiosk, I remember Freddie saying needs a little bit of TLC, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we need to work on the kiosk. There's that pollinator garden that got put in. There's some of those trails that Alex had worked on with like putting wood chips and things. I know it had some, there's some chainsaw to keep those out of the knotweed. And then the apple trees, of course.
And I would just like to put in a plug for, there's nothing saying that we need to spend it right away. There could be some really important project that comes up a year and a half from now. And then we've got the funds to do it, so, yeah.
Totally. Oh, totally. We've just been sitting on this for a long time, and we keep thinking someday we should think about it. And I just think that we just want to make sure we're thinking about it and not forgetting it exists.
Definitely. And it's good to keep a running list of possible needs.
Yeah. But it sounds like we're sort of taking over some of the work that the money was doing by maintaining the apple trees, not as nicely maybe, but as well as we can for non-professionally, and that's probably all it needs anyway. So that's a really nice bonus, I think, that we don't have to spend money on that. But yeah, so I just want to keep that idea going. We've been talking about that for a while, and now we know what amount we're dealing with. We've been nice to think about. Any other thoughts about that for now? Then it sounds like we didn't get. Well, let's hear from the Audubon Society. Frankly, I really want to hear what they say. Okay, how about mowing? Consider mowing.
Right.
Helen, did you hear
The
that?
idea was to improve bird habitat by mowing at Sycamore Park less extensively and less frequently. And it turns out that the town does that mowing, is our impression. So I called Valerie to ask information on who to talk to about this, and she did not return my call. So I'll try again.
Do you want me to get her? See if she doesn't roll.
Talk about putting someone in the hot seat.
She must have heard you bring it up because she left.
Was she here earlier and then left when she saw that mowing was on the agenda?
I guess she's still here. She's just down the hall. Carolyn tracked her down.
Yeah, cool. I think folks would be open to it. Okay. Just needs to be communication. Okay, great. I'll tell them that. Thank you. Okay. Oh, that was not as cushiony of a chair I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah, the trailer.
Ow. Okay, sorry. Valerie said that she forwarded the information about maybe mowing less to Meredith, and that Meredith's going to look at that. And she said that she thinks there's the possibility for that to happen, and we just need to have open communication. And she's trying to facilitate that through Meredith right now.
Okay.
That's all she said. I was thinking about this mowing idea, and I was thinking, what if we did the Jono idea that you brought up at least? I've never heard of it before, with this no mow May. Is that what it was?
Yes, for
Um,
pollen benefit.
Anyone want to like make that a thing for this May and like try to get people involved in not mowing? Would that be a fun project or?
You mean
No.
townwide?
Yeah.
Can I clarify the goals for the reduced mowing? Is it pollination? Is it saving on greenhouse gas emissions? Is it like what are the thoughts behind that?
At least at Sycamore Park, I was proposing that we mow less and have less mow less often and mow less of the area, just because it's a monoculture of grass that does nothing for anyone other than people to walk on. So there's no habitat for insects, there's no habitat for birds, rodents, anybody.
Yep.
So the more diverse habitat, the greater the biodiversity it will support. So that was my idea. And then it also uses less greenhouse gases to mow it. So you're saving money, you're saving CO2 being emitted, and you're creating habitat.
There are compromises, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was in our last conversation on this topic, where the example of Otter Creek Park in Middlebury often has their field grow up quite a bit, and they have a perimeter path that is maintained, and then they have a boardwalk that goes down on the creek and so on. And then, typically there's one other benefit I think to add to the list is for a larger field, bobolinks and certain birds, back to the Edith Stock funds and so on. If they don't mow that first cutting, then those birds can fledge. So I would promote instead of, let's say you skip the month of May and don't mow, but you mow a few paths down at Sycamore Park, and that's a great time to take a little bit of that other funding for that particular turn of mowing and get to the perimeter. Maybe deal with some of the knotweed and other sort of brown and shrubs and things that really want to grow up right on the edge with a brush hog, because if you can keep that back, that stuff always pushes in, and guys that are hired to mow, they go around fallen stuff. They don't like prickers that are coming in, and therefore your large area that is open gets smaller and smaller and smaller and encroaches. So if you devote some of that time to the perimeter, sorry that this is maybe a little more expansive than was necessary, and then you have a few paths, at least in May, I think you're accomplishing quite a bit on all fronts.
Jono, are you suggesting that some of the money that would have been spent on mowing every week gets diverted to that perimeter treatment with brush hogging?
Yeah, it might be considered time. So let's say if they devote, I don't know, 2 mowings in the month of May, possibly the 1st and the 3rd, something to that effect, whatever that hours. What's that?
And do brush hogging instead on the perimeter?
Yeah, do 2 things. So one is a brush hogging perimeter mowing to keep that edge so it's not encroaching, and the other would just be taking one of their ride mowers and saying, well, we think this would be great if you could put a path here. and on, on this part, and then on the outer part, and then so you have a way to utilize and enjoy the park. At the same time, you're not spending all that time just cutting the whole lawn, and we have lots of, we're maintaining the park in a proper way, but we're not just mowing it to mow it, because that's the traditional route, and we know too much now, and we have too many things to consider to keep doing what we've been doing. Yes.
Would you like us, maybe we could have a conversation with Meredith about this? I think she sounds like maybe knows more about this. In terms of who does it, and since that's where Valerie's thought that she thought she'd be the point person, so we could bring Meredith in on the conversation at a future meeting.
I think that's a great idea, and might be applicable to a few other areas that she has oversight with, and maybe the idea spreads to cemeteries and other open areas. I mean, it's last spring, the whole idea of no mow May was the first time I heard of it. I did it at my house. It was a little challenging in some ways. I'm sure, weather would impact the results, because if it's raining a lot, it's going to have some challenges, but I think it's a good concept to work from.
Well, as I recall from the town plan, we spend an awful big chunk of money on mowing this big cemetery. And so if there are ways to cut that down, I'm sure if we could work with whoever's doing that contract and work with them to, help pollinators in spring, but also end up saving the town money. I mean, that sounds like a win, as long as they can get in there and get done what they need to do. If it's too long or something, I think that would be something interesting to push for pollination. I think that's great.
I think it makes sense to start simple and Sycamore Park is so heavily used that we have a lot of townspeople will see what's going on there. We can put signage at the kiosk to say, this is what we're experimenting with. You can try it on your home lawn. That might help spread the word about no mow May and so forth.
Cool. Okay, so I'll invite Meredith, and then maybe we'll see what does she think about this idea of like no mow May for Sycamore Park, and think about if she thinks this could get traction to other places in the town, how we would do this in May, how would we make this happen? Maybe some of the green update emails I send, I could have a thing on there about like, and visit Sycamore Park, we're no mowing it, or something. Educational outreach with that at the same time, I don't know.
I feel like I saw signs, like yard signs in people's yards talking about it.
Oh,
I feel like that's because I've heard about it. And I think that might have been how. But did anyone else see those signs driving around? Like, just like the little ones in people's yards that just said no mow May.
If we got our hands on that, then we go stick some of those at Sycamore.
Yeah.
It'd be cool.
So, I don't know. I think that's where I saw it.
Cool.
In a random
yard
sign driving on the road.
Well, Richard Butz, who's a alumni of the commission, he has a yard that has a formal sign on the sidewalk that says this is being kept, this garden is for pollinators, and it's from, I don't know, I don't remember. It's on the road on Mountain Street, right? You can see it on that sidewalk. He's got an official plaque thing up. It's something about pollinators. I know he's been doing a lot with milkweed, so he might have some ideas.
His wife is the gardener.
Right? So maybe we could ask them if they had suggestions, because it seems like they seem to know something about it since I've seen that sign. I know remember when she handed out
the little plantings, little baby milkweed plants. Yep.
Handed those all out. That was great. So maybe I'll see if they want to be looped in to this conversation as well. Great. Okay, cool. So I'll pursue emailing those two people about the conversation. But since I'll be doing Green Up Day heading up to May, I won't be leading this project, so someone else will need to do I'm happy to email Meredith and Richard and Gail, I think. So I to get that conversation going for a meeting if you'd like. Okay, cool. And then is that all we want to talk about from mowing? Good. Okay, great. And then annual report. I think that's due sometime. And it always catches me off guard. And I was hoping that they snag some things from past minutes and make a first pass, and then I could edit it and work on it. But she's not here, so I can't pin it on her. So I just want to make it publicly known I'm going to email her and ask her to help with that. And then we can work on editing it into a report once she has that first pass of grabbing things out of the minutes and agendas. Because I think it's due, and it's always a bad time. I think it's probably soon.
Like over the holidays, yeah.
Right? It's like, this is not a good day. So I wanted to get a jump on that this year by remembering it before I got the email that says it's due really soon. So that was the last thing I wanted to say, but I'll just email her. Cool. Okay. Anything else I want to talk about for any new items on the agenda, any events? Our next meeting is January 12th, the new year. And I think we'll try for a Holly Hall with the Zoom option as well for that. Does that sound good? I think I may have to make a new link for the new year, so don't use the old Zoom link. I might have to update it, so just make sure you use whatever I sent out in January. I think when I made the last link, I could only make it for 1 year out, so I think I may have to make a new one. So just a note, use the new link if there's a new link. Cool, is that it? Are we good? I would like to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn. Thank you, Carolyn, for a very productive meeting and everyone else's contributions.
Thank you, Jonna. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Okay, Kristen seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for participating today. I'll see you all in January. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.